Friday's Focus report takes you to Morocco, a country that's been rocked by its biggest protests since the Arab Spring. The so-called People's Movement first took to the streets 6 months ago following the death of a fishmonger in the Port Reef region. He was crushed after jumping into a rubbish truck to retrieve fish that police there say he'd caught illegally. That death sparked protests that have now snowballed, with demonstrators venting their anger over a whole host of economic, social and political issues. Authorities have detained several opposition figureheads, and many Moroccans now say only the intervention of the king can resolve the crisis. Our team on the ground have sent this report.
Hoceima, the centre of the ongoing Rift protest movement. This Moroccan city sits nestled between two mountains at the edge of the Mediterranean Sea. In this isolated region, protesters are demanding jobs and better access to healthcare and education. 3 weeks of clashes between police and demonstrators were sparked by the arrest of protest leader Nasser Zafzafi. The high cost of daily life in this deprived region has also stoked tensions. Fishing provides most of the revenue for the city, but recently business has been slow.
In 2009, our harbour had a fleet of 45 sardine fishing boats. Now in 2017, we only have 23. The main reason is because so many trawler owners went bankrupt.
Fewer fish has led to growing poverty. Then a protest movement formed after the death of fishmonger Mohsin Fikri. Its current leader, Nasser Zafzafi, was arrested in May for disrupting the preaching of an imam at this mosque. Despite this illegal act, he still has strong local support.
Nasser Zafzafi was being targeted. They were just waiting for the right moment. That incident at the mosque was just a pretext.
Yes, of course, everyone here, everyone in Hoceima, but also a majority of people throughout Morocco are supporting Zafzafi.
The movement's supporters can easily be found at the central market. Many people here complain about the cost of living. At around €3 for a kilo, sardines are twice the price here than anywhere else in Morocco.
That's why people have gone out on the streets. They want lower prices, they want work, hospitals, and for prisoners to be released. These guys haven't done anything wrong at all. They were just saying the truth.
With almost daily arrests, sympathizers now say they're afraid to speak out.
It's up to those in power to find a solution, not us. We are neither separatists nor anti-royalists. Government officials have to solve it for us. Those in charge are robbing us and discriminating against our region.
The Moroccan state has already spent the past 2 years working on a major social project launched by the king. Officials say it includes responses to these residents' concerns among measures aimed generally at the rural areas of the country.
Above all, our aim is to open up our agricultural regions and to help small farmers have better access to national and international markets.
A planned road aimed at improving access to the region could cut journey times between Hoceima and the motorway in half. A new hospital is also due to open at the end of 2019. Protesters say they suffer from a lack of specialized treatment. It was one of their key demands.
For patients requiring an MRI scan, they have to go to Oujda or to Fez. The new hospital will meet this need while bringing care closer to the local population and improve the accessibility to care across the whole Hoceima region.
It may have come late for residents, but the authorities ensure that deadlines will be kept.
The deadlines are there, the timetable is there. We are there to ensure the deadlines are kept.
The protesters say they've waited too long and have been demonstrating daily for over 3 weeks. To avoid the police lockdown in the city centre, smaller, more spontaneous rallies have been organised. Many have their faces hidden out of fear of arrest. The authorities say 86 people have been taken in by the police over the past 3 weeks, but protesters say the number has gone past 100.
Should they really be imprisoning people who are just asking for dignity, infrastructure, schools and universities? We'll stop when they respond to our demands, but first, they have to release the prisoners. It's non-negotiable. and then they must satisfy our demands. They're not even demands. These are our basic rights. In other countries, rights are guaranteed, but here we still have to struggle for our rights.
With the situation showing no sign of improving, there are increasing calls across the country for Morocco's royal palace to intervene.
Well, for more insight on this Friday's Focus Report, we can cross now live to the US Capitol and speak to William Lawrence from the city's George Washington University, who's also a fellow at the Tangiers American Legation Institute for Moroccan Studies. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Lawrence. First of all, these protests started way back in April. What's the firewood that's keeping the whole movement alight? Is there some common ground to this discontent, or is it just a hodgepodge of different issues?
Well, if I was going to summarize the protests in one word, it's a word actually that goes back to the Algeria '88 protests, which is hogra. Hogra means humiliation, injustice, arbitrary abuse of power, that sort of thing. And certainly this movement brings together a lot of different protests, and there's elements that relate to long-standing protests in the Berber and Rif areas of Morocco. There's an Arab Spring element and others, but certainly there's a shared sense of grievance and feeling that the government is not sufficiently meeting local needs.
But is it more political, more economic? Are people talking about poverty? What is it that they're really talking about? If you can give us a cross-section of what people there are protesting for.
Well, all of the above, but I would say that the response of the government has been more economic than political, as your piece aptly demonstrated. And I think if we overly frame these protests as only economic, we're not dealing with the political side of things. Most of the leadership of the movement has been arrested, hundreds of arrests. There's been 30 leaders condemned to 18 months of prison, which is a very harsh penalty in Morocco. But certainly there are economic elements, political elements, cultural elements, the whole Berber side of things. And all of these are sort of grouped together into a dissatisfaction with government responses, which tend to be these long-term economic projects.
You mentioned the government response there. In your view, have the government been containing this protest movement, or have they actually been fanning the flames?
Some of both. And one of the major grievances is sort of a blockade of the city almost. There's a military encirclement of the city, which has caused a lot of distress to local residents. But certainly the Moroccan authorities typically have a light touch on these types of events, which is one of the reasons Morocco has handled the protests since 2011 much better than some of the neighboring countries. This light touch often leads to injuries of police forces rather than injuries of protesters, that sort of thing. But in this case, the heavier hand tends to inflame local protesters, and certainly the government response is the most important thing in determining the next step of protesters.
Comparisons have, of course, also been made to the Arab Spring that swept across the north of Africa several years ago. In your view, is it fair to make such links?
Absolutely. And the leader of this movement who was arrested on May 29th was the local Arab Spring leader and is using a lot of the same vocabulary. The solidarity protest in Rabat last Sunday, which had the largest crowd since 2011, very much was the same crowd that protested in the Arab Spring. Will it reach that level? Probably not. The height of protests in the Arab Spring in April and June of 2011 was upwards of 1 million protesters in 100 Moroccan cities and towns simultaneously. I don't think this will reach that level. Right now, what we're seeing is more a wave of protest in the Berber areas, Nador and Imouzen and Tinrir. So it's been more affecting the Berber-speaking areas, despite this solidarity protest in the capital.
William Lawrence from Washington, D.C., an expert on Moroccan affairs. Thank you very much. That's sadly all we have time for.